John Fredericks Radio Network and the John Fredericks Radio app, and I am your Godzilla of the truth in America, your oracle of the deplorables. Mark Mix coming up. Virginia, right to work. This is unbelievable what is going on in the Virginia General Assembly. Bills up there to scrap right to work, which is going to cost Virginians 200,000 jobs. This is an affordability crisis, taking money out of your check. It's just nuts. And look, not only that, 80% of Virginians want to keep it. But yet these legislators are in there, and all they want to do is get rid of right to work so they get more money from the unions, which then go back in their coffers. And it's just a cycle of corruption from one to the other. These unions, when they're not accountable to you, they do nothing to help you. They just take your money. Joining us now, Mark Mix. Mark is the national president and CEO of the National Right to Work Committee. Mark, thanks for being with us.
John, good to be with you again. And the Virginia legislature's fired up, and they've been busy starting on Wednesday. Although, to your point, the right to work law was introduced prior to the session starting. And so we've got to gird for that and prepare for it. And despite what the politicians say publicly, we've got to protect Virginians' ability to choose whether or not they want to financially support a labor union just to get or keep a job.
Mark, this is the biggest issue to me in the Virginia General Assembly, because you've got a majority of both state senators and House of Delegate members on the Democrat side that have promised the unions that they're going to get rid of this. And why do the unions want this out? Is because they can simply confiscate more money out of paychecks for more unsuspecting workers, and if they don't, they get fired. So they're going to take the money, then they turn around, Mark. This is one of the biggest issues. They turn around, they take your money out of your check, then they turn around and they give that money back to Democratic politicians. So basically the incentive is take the money from the worker, give it to the Democratic politician in order for them to get reelected, Mark.
Yeah, that's kind of the vicious cycle of the forced dues scheme. It happens in state after state that allows forced unionism and allows union officials the privilege of forcing workers to pay dues or fees to get or keep a job. You know, we've been expecting this fight throughout the campaign trail. There was talk about repealing the right to work law. Union officials are still pushing for that. Some politicians are trying to tamp that down. But John, the other part of this equation is yesterday, they introduced a bill that would unionize the public sector in Virginia. This is something that many states who've been experiencing union power over government employees, whether it be at the local level, at the county level, or at the state level, they're trying to back off and reform that privilege and power that union officials have. And yet Virginia's heading headlong into it. In fact, the bill that was introduced I think yesterday in the session is a full-fledged union bargaining bill over every government employee in the Commonwealth, including home health care providers. And it has binding arbitration, meaning that all of a sudden some third party can come in and impose union contracts that increase the cost of government on taxpayers in Virginia. We've seen this before in other states. We've seen litigation battles over binding arbitration where a third party comes in and says, you know what, I don't care what you were asking for. This is the way you're going to govern your government employees. It's something that's very, very dangerous, but it also includes that provision that would encourage, quote, union membership, which encourage union dues in the public sector as well, even though, because of a Supreme Court case we won back in 2018, no government employee anywhere in America can be forced to pay dues or fees to get or keep a job or work for government. But John, let me tell you this, union officials with the Service Employees International Union or the AFL-CIO, whoever, they don't tell employees they don't have to pay union dues. They put language in a contract that says, yeah, you must be a member in good standing of the union, which any reasonable person would think, well, I guess I got to join the union. So there's a lot more to fight, but the right to work issue is really an important issue as the Virginia legislature considers whether or not they want to keep the law.
Mark Mix with us, Mark, president of the National Right to Work Committee. Mark, walk us through an example where when in the public sector in state government, where unionization becomes a reality. Walk us through an example where that really harms the people of the state and some of the ramifications of that, so we can put it into real terms.
Well, John, I mean, I think the best person to explain this would be Scott Walker, then governor of Wisconsin, when Wisconsin was the first state to adopt a statewide unionization structure for government employees in 1959. New York City had toyed with it in various sections of their bureaucracy. But Wisconsin was the first state. And when Scott Walker was elected back in 2010, he said the only way Wisconsin can survive fiscally is to reform this structure that's grown since 1959 to the present day when Walker was battling it. They introduced a bill called Act 10, which literally reformed it. It didn't do away with the bargaining, which we recommended they do, but it limited it to very significant and very specific issues when it came to how you're governing the government bureaucracy in a state like Wisconsin. And it was a huge fight, John. Literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people descended, probably paid agitators like we're seeing in other places in the country right now, descended on Madison, Wisconsin, and the destruction of the Capitol. I forget what the numbers were, but there were millions of dollars worth of destruction. There were threats and violence, and the governor had to use tunnels underneath the state Capitol to get out and get around. And he wrote a book about this. But what he did know, what did happen, was that the taxpayers of Wisconsin have saved over $30 billion since that reform back in 2010, 2011. So, this is a case study for why Virginia doesn't want to go that way. And you've had other states like Tennessee who have rolled back the power of government unions when it comes to teachers and the educational structure. What we do know is that the cost of government is dramatically increased. And when you look at those states that have the most broad sweeping bargaining powers for unions like California, Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, those states are on the financial precipice when it comes to how they can fund government. And believe it or not, they're asking for more taxpayer money out in California. I mean, the billionaire tax in California, so-called billionaire tax, is sponsored by guess who? The Service Employees International Union. So they can have more money to take more power over workers. So Virginia's playing with fire. I mean, basically, government workers in Virginia can join a union if they choose to. They can lobby the government just like you and I can, John. But what we've said in Virginia back in 1993, a bill signed by Governor Doug Wilder at the time, it said, well, we'll recognize you, we'll listen to you. We don't have to basically take your demands and basically apply it to the bureaucracy in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Obviously, 5 years ago now, when Governor Northam was in office, they rescinded that prohibition and made it optional. And so we've seen a couple of localities like Fairfax County, Arlington, those places in Northern Virginia have said, yes, we're going to bargain with unions and we're going to watch the cost structure of government increase. Now this bill would make it mandatory. They would set up a structure for it, and it would include binding arbitration, John, which says, okay, once the two sides have an impasse, some third party steps in and says, okay, this is how you're going to fund government. Terry Branstad had this happen to him in Iowa back when he was governor, and he said, no, I'm not going to agree to the arbitrator because I'm not going to raise taxes on Iowa citizens. The arbitrator came in, said, you're going to raise taxes. The Supreme Court in Iowa upheld that. And so taxes went up because a third-party independent arbitrator said, yeah, you got to fund this. That's what could happen in Virginia, and it's wrong.
So, look, I mean, a poll there was a couple polls done in Virginia. This is astounding to me. I mean, you can't get 80% of people in this country to agree on anything, right? You just can't. So two polls come out. Over 80% of the people that live in the Commonwealth of Virginia want to preserve right to work. And yet we've got, major bills out now to get rid of this. And Governor Spanberger says one thing, does another. So you can't really count on what she's going to do. But she's going to have this bill is going to pass. You're going to have a tremendous amount of pressure on her in order to sign this, especially because, she has larger political aspirations. She's going to want the unions behind her. Her vetoing this would be a stain on that. And so that's what I'm concerned about, is if it gets to her desk, she's really going to be compromised here. How do we work our way around that? Can we get this thing squashed in committee?
Well, I don't know about that, John. When the committee, I think when the Republicans were a one-seat minority in the committee, Dick Saslaw, who was then, I think, the Senate leader or whatever, had a committee that had a 12-3 ratio, Democrats to Republicans. So, they use power very, very effectively. So I don't know. I think the best way to do it, and the good news, John, is that other parts of the coalition here in Virginia are waking up. I know that the Chamber of Commerce and other business organizations and other taxpayer organizations have gotten involved in this, engaged in this fight, and they're talking about it. And I think, you've got union officials kind of trying to tamp it down. You've got politicians trying to tamp it down. But John, these battles are never over until until the fat lady sings, or whatever that metaphor is, until they sine die this session, which is a 60-day session, we have to continue to fight and let people know that while this bill is pending and it'll be assigned to committee, they can bring it up at any given time. They can make it as an amendment. So we've got to stay vigilant. And one of the ways we do that, thanks to you bringing attention to the issue like you do, and our organization is not going to leave any stone unturned, making sure Virginians know about what's out there, what could happen, whether it happens or not, or whether a politician says, oh, don't worry about that. I mean, those are dangerous words when a politician says, oh, don't worry about it. We have to worry about it. We have to stay vigilant. We have to stay informed. And that's what we're going to try to do over this next 60 days for sure, to make sure we can tamp it down and stop it. But that's no guarantee. We've got to stay vigilant. That's the point.
26 states in the Union in America have right-to-work laws that give people the choice of whether or not to join a union. Some of those states have very robust union membership. This is what I'm trying to get across to people. Right-to-work doesn't mean there's no unions. All right-to-work means is you can't confiscate money out of somebody's check. If they want to join it, they can. And the biggest thing that we miss in this argument, because it's all about the power of unions and the leverage that they have, and then they give it back to the Democrats, is in the states where unions are participatory as voluntary, those unions are the most responsive to their members, because if you're paying them money, you can opt out if they don't feel that the union is representing their interest in a viable and meaningful way. Comment on that.
Yeah, John, I mean, I don't know what to say any better than you just said it. I mean, being able to hold someone accountable when you're giving them money, saying, look, I don't agree with what you're doing. I mean, we know that in the right-to-work states, when a worker can vote with their pocketbook, it changes the behavior of union officials. They pay more attention to what's going on the shop floor than what's going on in the legislative floor, whether it be the House of Delegates or the state Senate in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Basically, union officials have a get out of jail free card when it comes to forced unionism. They can say and do whatever they want, because in order for a worker to maintain their employment, they've got to pay them. If they don't pay, they don't work. So in a state where you have that accountability, where a worker can say, look, I disagree with your political stance. I disagree with the way you're spending my money, whether it be on politics or ideological causes, or just how they're representing the worker in the workplace. I mean, we've got a situation in Maryland right now, John, where employees had voted down a contract, and the United Food Commercial Workers basically imposed that contract on them. And Maryland's a forced union state. And that contract that the union was negotiating with the employer had a union security clause that says you got to pay dues to keep your job. The workers voted it down. The union said, well, we won't enforce it, but they won't take it out of the contract language. So these are the types of battles that we have when it comes to the difference between the abilities for workers to hold union officials accountable and the power and privilege that comes with force and coercion. And that's the debate right now in Virginia over Virginia's right to work law.
I saw a jobs estimate the other day that came out that was kind of stunning, saying that, and this is just real, saying that the absence of right to work in Virginia would cost Virginians 200,000 jobs. That's a lot of jobs in a state that has faced unemployment because of the federal worker reduction, and a lot of people around northern and north central Virginia were affected by that. I mean, how responsible is it to do something when people have been laid off from the federal government, and it's going to cost the state 200,000 jobs that people need? Like, how is that even responsible governance?
Yeah. We'll get into the base question. It's not responsible to force workers to pay a private organization for the ability to work, first and foremost. But you're right. I mean, when you look at the economic vitality of the right-to-work states versus the non-right-to-work states, it couldn't be more clear, John. The evidence gets better year after year. We know that manufacturing job growth in right-to-work states is 10 times greater. The percentage growth in manufacturing jobs, 10 times greater in right-to-work states than non-right-to-work states. The growth in private sector employment is nearly double in right-to-work states than non-right-to-work states. Governor Youngkin is probably the best advocate for right-to-work, because he's the one out there meeting with businesses looking to expand, relocate, invest, and create new opportunities in Virginia and the Commonwealth. And he is an ardent supporter of right-to-work, not because it's anti-worker, because it's pro-growth. And CNBC has recognized right-to-work and as a condition and one of those policies that make a state better for business. Virginia's been the #1 state for business in 3 out of the last 6 years. And people understand that. I think Abigail Spanberger is kind of getting hit in the head with that if she really wants to grow the economy in the Commonwealth of Virginia, right to work is a good policy. And again, to your point, John, doesn't stop anyone from joining a union. It just says you can't be forced and compelled to pay dues to get or keep a job. So hopefully that message will get out, and the message of the potential loss in jobs and investment in the Commonwealth will be an important point when this bill comes up for debate and when the issue comes up for debate in the Virginia General Assembly.
Well, listen, it's likely to get to her desk. It's likely, so, but she is, I think she realizes how tough this would be for people trying to get jobs. Look, because she wants to run for president. I mean, there's just no question about it. And so she's got to look at, okay, if I need a legacy in Virginia. I mean, this is what's really hurt Governor Youngkin, because he doesn't really have a legacy to run for president other than he vetoed 500 bills or something. So you need a legacy. And her legacy of collapsing job growth in Virginia, is not a platform, for getting Iowa voters when this thing comes up. So she's going to be very conflicted here, because on the other hand, she's going to want the union backers. And if she vetoes this, which is the first chance for Virginia Democrats have had to get rid of it, then she's going to be the scourge of the union. So she's in a very difficult position. But here's how we can help, because I believe in action, action, action. Talk is cheap. But here's what we can do. I encourage everybody to go to VirginiaRightToWork.com, spelled out, VirginiaRightToWork.com, and demand your legislators and Governor Spanberger oppose federal unionism and protect right to work by going to VirginiaRightToWork.com, VirginiaRightToWork.com. Defend them and sign their petition at VirginiaRightToWork.com. And, the thing is, Mark, these things are real. When you get, several 100,000 of these petitions in online and you send them to the governor, and there are people that are in Virginia that want jobs, that this is going to affect 200,000 of them, it's a big deal, Mark.
Yeah, John, and the only way we can have our voices heard is to contact our legislators just like this. This is this grand experiment in self-government. I mean, this is what Jefferson talked about when he said, you've got to be educated about what government's up to. Otherwise, you're going to end up with bad government. And so thank you for that. And thank you for promoting that, because that's the way we get in touch. Politicians, Everett Dirksen is credited with saying, when I feel the heat, I see the light. And we've got to create the heat. I have a better metaphor, which is motorboats and sailboats in politics. I mean, the motorboats you really can't do a lot about. They've got them on the other side. We've got them on our side. Those are the people that are under power and directed with an ideological basis or a philosophical basis. On the other, the motorboats on the other side are wrong, but they're sincere. It's the sailboats where policy gets made. Those people are looking at the wind. They're trying to make it to somewhere. And if we create enough wind, then we can change their behavior. And so that's what this is all about. It's about being involved and engaged and basically contacting your legislator, because they do work for us, and letting them know how we feel about these issues is a really important part of that. That's how we win these battles.
And it's really easy to do, because you've got a website up. Just go to VirginiaRightToWork.com, VirginiaRightToWork.com, and you can sign the petition there. And as far as Abigail Spanberger is concerned, this is going to be a real bellwether for her, because the other problem, if she strikes this down, and she's got to travel. A lot of these governors, they travel all over the country. They travel international to bring jobs, to bring manufacturing plants and other businesses to their states. I tried to get Governor Kemp on the other day, and he was in Taiwan or something, out there on a trade mission. So they're trying to get businesses in. I don't know how you can get businesses in. The first thing you got to do is they got to join a union. Oh, really? Let's see. So I go right across the border to Tennessee. No, there's right to work there. Or I can go to North Carolina. That's right down there, down the Chesapeake Expressway, like 20 minutes. I can go there. And so you want me to come here and do what? I mean, I don't know how look, when McAuliffe was saying he was going to sign right to work, he was never serious about that, because he knew it would never come up. He said, oh, yeah, I'm going to sign it. I'm going to get rid of it. But then he went out across the world bringing these jobs back. And the first thing he said was, well, we have right to work in Virginia. So, he said one thing to placate his base, but then he knew it would never come up because he had a Republican General Assembly. But Spanberger is now she's in a very, very precarious position. I'm hopeful that when she sees, 250,000 petitions and sees that 80% of Virginians don't like this and it's going to cost her 200,000 jobs, and when she goes out on her trade missions, that's the first question she's going to get. I'm hoping that she sees the light. What is it that you said that when the heat comes, you see the light? What was that?
When they feel the heat, they see the light. And we've got to create heat. John, you're good at it. We got to keep at it. That's for sure.
The heat is getting 250,000 petitions on Spanberger's desk. See, that's called heat in Virginia. So all you got to do, folks, action, action, action. We can sit around and talk all day till we're blue in the face. You know me. I love action. Talk is cheap. Go to VirginiaRightToWork.com. VirginiaRightToWork.com. Sign that petition there. They're going to get that to Spanberger, and it's going to make a huge difference. Remember, she's very politically sensitive. She doesn't like to make waves. That's kind of how she is. She wants to run for president. She wants a VP, but she's also got to have a legacy. And if the legacy is, I kill jobs in Virginia, that ain't going anywhere. So we got to sign this petition, Mark. Virginia, go to VirginiaRightToWork.com. Mark, I'll give you the final word.
Well, John, this is important, and the action is important, and creating the heat is important. If we're going to have a Commonwealth of Virginia that is still one of the top states for doing business, when site selection experts say that half of all companies looking to expand, relocate, or invest new capital will actually kick out states that don't have right to work laws from the very beginning of the process, we know there's a lot at stake for families that want to keep their children here in the Commonwealth to work and be close by. I mean, creating opportunity is an important part of that. Right to work, the individual freedom that it protects, and the economic vitality that it protects is an important part of that equation. So get out there, sign that petition that John mentioned. And John, thanks for making sure that people understand that and to show it and are mobilized and are heading to that location to send a message to Virginia politicians. We want to keep our right to work law.
Truth and clarity, Mark. Truth and clarity. That's what this whole thing is about. We'll see you soon. You can follow Mark Mix at right2work, at right2work. Mark, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, John. Always a privilege to be with you.